We're bringing on Brian Stone now. Brian Stone at Watch the Stone on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it nowadays. He's a Georgia Southern writer for Underdog Dynasty on SB Nation as well. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, of course. So
Absolutely.
We wanted to get a little insight into the Georgia Southern side of things. So I guess, Daniel, do you want to kick it off with the first question and try and probe and see what's expected out of Georgia Southern this weekend?
Yeah, absolutely. So coming into this weekend, you all have had a fantastic season. We wanted to ask, one, how you're feeling about this season so far, and what are your team's goals looking like compared to what you thought at the start of the season they might be?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a big thing was, and I'll kind of go back to last season a little bit. One thing last season is they fielded one of the worst defenses in the country, to be quite frank. I mean, rush defense, I think we finished the year third worst in the country in yardage, and it was very apparent. You go back and watch the Coastal Carolina game where the guy gets hurdled at the end of the game and Coastal goes in and scores like right at the buzzer. Things like that were what kept this team from reaching their full potential. And so, I mean, last year I said multiple times, I said, if they had even fielded a country U.S. average defense, this would have been an 8-4, 9-3 football team with the offense that they had.
Yeah.
This year, it's a definite improvement on the defensive side of the ball. The offensive production is still there. They really haven't missed a beat with Davis Brin at quarterback instead of Kyle Van Treese. They're now 60th in the country, which is like dead middle as far as total yardage allowed on the defensive side of the ball. So they've sort of shored up what was the big issue last year. And again, the offense is still kind of humming even with that quarterback change. I mean, I think the goal is same as any other team in the East. It's to make the Sun Belt title game, and then you play the winner essentially of Troy, South Alabama at this point, and then you kind of figure it out from there. Troy's obviously the defending champs. They look like they've sort of rounded into form in recent weeks, but yeah, I mean, pretty positive overall. Like outside of the Wisconsin game, I mean, they've looked solid.
Yeah, you can say that again. Troy, in the last 8 quarters of football, has allowed 1 touchdown and 10 total points. So I'm very glad, James, you faced off against the Trojans 3 weeks ago rather than 3 weeks from today.
They look like a buzzsaw on offense right now. Gunnar Watson has played phenomenally for them.
Yeah.
I also host like a Sun Belt centric podcast myself, and I looked it up. They're allowing 8.7 points to conference opponents through 3 games.
Oh, that's great! Wow, that's pretty good.
They're a buzzsaw right now on defense.
Man, I mean,
that JMU 16 is looking real nice right now.
Yeah, that is. I love that. I like how you discounted Arkansas State, Texas State, Louisiana over there in the West too. You said it's between Troy. I mean, I'm fully with you. I'm fully with you.
Louisiana might be a sleeper. I like them this year.
Believe me, we have a Louisiana guy on our show, and he's always talking up Zion Chris and all of those guys, and I totally understand it. Texas State let me down a little bit. I actually bet them like for real life this weekend, and thought, and then they just had the punt block. We talked about it on our podcast. Like, didn't kick a field goal going into halftime for some reason. Gave up 3 free points. There was just a lot that Texas State did wrong that sort of snowballed.
Yeah. Before we talk more about this game, I do want to rewind back to when Clay Helton first got to Statesboro, because this was a triple option team. Me and Daniel were talking about this a few minutes ago. This was a triple option team that was 30-33 the 5 years prior to Helton taking over. I know there was a really good double-digit win season in there, but there was also like a 2-10 season in there. So it was kind of a program that experienced some up and downs. They ran, I don't mean to be rude to triple option apologists, but they ran kind of an archaic style of offense. And then Clay Helton comes in. The first thing he does is go and gets Kyle Van Treese, and he goes, you know what, guys? Remember the triple option where we run it 75 times a game? We're going to now pass it 75 times a game, a complete 180. What was the fan reaction to that? And then what has made this transition? You never see a triple option team transition this fast.
Yeah, I mean, So one big thing was they didn't run the triple option like per se, right?
Okay.
Like going back to when Army coach Jeff Monken was with the team, they ran the true like
Yes.
wishbone. I mean
Okay.
that was it was like every play under center, every play is a fake to the fullback, and then we go from there. The offense that they had run under Willie Fritz, who's now the Tulane head coach, was more of like it was like an Oregon style, like Chip Kelly spread option. And honestly, it was a lot like what Coastal had been running
Okay.
under Jamie Chadwell.
Mm.
They obviously threw the ball way more than we did, but that was sort of the same idea. So Helton comes in, and obviously the last year of Chad Lunsford being the coach was a disaster, right? Like he essentially didn't
Yeah.
replace the quarterback position. He didn't recruit all that well. It kind of seemed like he had just been like, "Hey guys, I'm just throwing the towel in." Like that's kind of the vibe that he gave off. So Helton comes on, and there's a lot of the fan base that is really married to the wishbone, even the spread, just the option in general. So moving away from that is really hard, especially for the older side of the fan base that watched, the Paul Johnson, Irk Russell triple option teams win these FCS national titles. That throwing the ball to them was like witchcraft. Like it was like, we don't do that here. That's not something we're interested in. Every time we've tried it, it's failed miserably. So we're not gonna do it. And so I was more optimistic because I felt like the offense needed to move into the 21st century. Like you can run the ball that much, but you have to have the threat of throwing the football, right? To exist in this day and age. So when he came in, I think what really took me off guard was Helton and offensive coordinator Brian Ellis came in and just totally changed the direction of the team. Honestly, with a lot of the personnel that was still there from the Chad Lunsford years where we didn't throw the football. So I was reading an interview actually before this season where someone asked Helton about the receiver position and said, "Did you know these guys like Caleb Hood, Derwin Burgess, like these receivers were going to be this productive when you came in?" And he was like, "No, I thought they were going to be like wide blockers, like, and I wasn't expecting a whole lot, and I thought we would really struggle. And then guess what? We throw these guys the football a couple times a game, and they can make things happen with it." So even he was kind of surprised by the results that he got from throwing the football as much as we did. Now, I will say there have been times in the last 2 years, and there have been specific instances where I do wish we would run the football a little more than we do. Like last year against Marshall, I believe Jalen White, who's our leading rusher, had like 100 yards rushing in the first quarter or something against Marshall, and I think he had 6 carries the rest of the game. So there's just things like that where it's like I think sometimes it goes too far one direction, and
Yeah.
it sort of needs to be more in the middle for them to be as good as they possibly could be, because I think we have 2 good running backs, and I honestly think they're underutilized.
OJ
Makes
Arnold
sense.
is a beast.
Yeah, OJ Arnold's the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I know best from the Georgia Southern offense. And considering that they have been a little underutilized this year, and we look at the matchup that JMU has, I think they're going to stay underutilized for another game.
Right.
That rush defense of James Madison compared to the passing offense that is Georgia Southern just shows it's two polar opposites for strengths of this team. So how do you feel confidence-wise of Davis Brin's ability to stretch out this JMU secondary, and what's your read on the JMU's defense and ability to be able to guard the pass, especially in the second half?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not underestimating JMU's defense by any means. Like, I honestly last year for us it was really an ebb and flow with the season. Like we started really hot, won a couple of games, hit a lull, and I honestly thought the JMU game last year was going to be part of that lull. So I didn't think they were going to. I was amazed by what Todd Centeio did last year, to be totally honest with you. So when we were going to play JMU last year, I was like, Georgia Southern really doesn't have a shot. Like their defense is so bad, like it's impossible to quantify to anybody who doesn't watch them on a weekly basis how bad they are. So when they came in and threw the football and scored 45 points, I was like, where has this team been all year? Like they beat Nebraska, but like Nebraska's looking to get rid of Scott Frost tomorrow. So like that's not it was a good win, but it was not like, oh man, you can really hang your hat on this. But I think I am confident with them throwing the football. Davis Brin had one game against Wisconsin earlier this year that really sort of gave me a lot of pause. But the last couple weeks when he's played, Ball State, Coastal Carolina, those games, he's really cleaned it up, to be totally honest. And he's been bulletproof in those games. So I mean, like Daniel said, I'm sure the rushers probably are going to go back to being underutilized, but the Davis Brin and the pass catchers we have are just they're great. So and there's a lot of options. It's not just like one guy and then everybody else. It's like everybody contributes pretty much an equal amount. So it's just a lot of pieces that you have to keep up with all at the same time.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's gonna be a wild game on Saturday. For this game, well, here's a question. It sounds like you might be a little bit of a betting person. You're on Texas State last weekend. For this game, I'm not going to ask you your pick yet. We'll save that till the very end. But the total, what's the total set at? Probably around, I should have kept up my betting dashboard, probably around the 60s, I'd imagine.
58.5.
58.5. Are you taking the over or the under, and why on that point total?
So I think I would take the under. I think that
I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think JMU's defense is really good. So, I mean, I think that as the level of offensive production we typically see from Georgia Southern is going to be down a little bit. Like they scored 38 points essentially in 2 quarters against Coastal last week. Like Coastal's defense, as we've seen, they looked good last night against App State, but in previous weeks, it's not been all that. It's not been all that impressive. So I think JMU's defense is easily the best defense they've played all season, and I'm including Wisconsin in that, to be totally honest with you. And then if you guys still had Todd Centeio, I would take the over. McLeod is a little bit of a step down from what Todd Centeio did last year, where he was, runaway Sunbelt Player of the Year. And so that's mostly my reason is like, I think JMU's defense is going to do a good job of containing Georgia Southern on some of those drives that last time we played Coastal led to points. But also, I think you guys' offense is also going to take a step back from when it was, 45-38 last year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, with a high-scoring game, and you're saying that the under is going to hit, what are some of the defensive players that we should watch out for in this game as JMU fans looking to this Georgia Southern front seven as well as secondary?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's kind of like the old like no-name defense. I can't remember the NFL team that they belong to, but
the Panthers, I think.
Yeah, like I would say at linebacker, Marquez Watson Trent is a really good player for Georgia Southern.
Love that name.
Yeah,
that's a name.
I think he was second or third team all conference last year, but the defense was just such a tire fire that it was impossible to point out anybody on the team and go, that guy's playing really well, because it's like, if you're giving up 200 yards rushing a game, is anybody really playing all that well? So it was, he racked up a bunch of tackles, but it was kind of like empty calories. So it was whatever. Latrell Bullard is another guy on the defensive line who he came in as a freshman last year. I think he was 330 pounds and he played nose tackle. He was like 6'3", 330, and he was sort of part of the youth movement that hit the team defensively in the second half of the year, because we realized the defense was so bad that they just have to throw somebody out there. Let's try something else. Anybody, please. So a lot of those guys have now had a year to sort of marinate, work through camp and get better in the off season. And like I said, the rush defense isn't bottom 3 in the country anymore. So clearly it's gotten better.
Hang the banner, folks. Hang the banner.
It's a low bar to clear, but they have gotten better. So I do have to give them credit for that. So those are two guys, I think, especially in the front seven, that you have to be aware of.
Gotcha. All right, that secondary is scary too, with how many picks they've had this year.
Yeah, I didn't really see, that was the other part of having such a bad run defense last year, is the secondary didn't get any credit for anything they did well, because they could stop a long pass on first down and then a running back could take it 30 yards on second down, and it didn't really matter what happened before that. So yeah, the secondary was pretty good, I would say, last year, but the front seven was just such a mess that it was almost impossible to enjoy anything that the defense did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So before we let you go, plug away. The floor is yours to plug. But at the end of all the plugs, you got to let us know who you're picking. I have a feeling I know where you're going to go, but got to hear a little bit of the reasoning on why you pick who you pick.
Sure. So like I said at the top, I host a Sunbelt centric podcast. It is called Warm Weather Fans, a play on fair weather fans. We record and come out with an episode once a week where we talk about the previous week of games and then go into the next week from, both a straight up game preview perspective, but also from a betting standpoint. We always make picks. I have a running tally of all of our records. We have 3 people on the show. So we do that as well. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Watch the Stone. That's my Twitter handle. And then Warm Weather Fans, the show, it's just that's the Twitter handle on X or Twitter or whatever it's called this week. But then other than that, I think my pick, especially with the line movement, JMU's a 6-point favorite. I'm going to take Georgia Southern +6. I think either way that this game could end up, I think it's going to be about a field goal deficit. I just think that these teams, like when you look at it, are pretty evenly matched overall. Obviously, JMU's got this great defense. Georgia Southern's got this great offense. And I just think when you mesh those two things, like it's one of those, something's got to give, things that happens. So I just think they're fairly evenly matched. And again, if Todd Centeio was back under center for the Dukes, I wouldn't feel as confident about the +6, but McLeod is not quite what Centeio is. So I'm taking Georgia Southern +6, and honestly, the under 2. Like, I think this is going to be a 24-21, 27-24 type contest, to be totally honest.
Yeah, I love it.
Gotcha.
Thank you so much for your time, Brian, today, and look forward to keeping up with what your thoughts are throughout the game and everything on Twitter at Watch the Stone. Are you a Kanye Jay-Z fan? Did that stem from Watch the Throne?
I did love that album.
Great album, yeah.
It did come out when I was, I think, a sophomore in college. But I just liked the pun, and I had a friend of mine give me the all thumbs up and was like, "You got to go with that as your Twitter handle," because it used to just be Stone and then a bunch of a couple digits after, and he was like, "No, Watch the Stone is so much better."
Love it. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.